Namaste and very good evening. His Excellency Ambassador of India to Nepal, Shri Vinay Mohan Quatraji, our esteemed visitor from India, Shri Sonam Wangchuk ji, the host for today's conversation. Distinguished guests, I request all of you to please be seated. यहाँहरू सबैलाई आफ्नो आसनमा बसिदिनु हुन म हार्दिक अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु. His Excellency Ambassador of India to Nepal, Shri Vinay Mohan Quatra, esteemed visitor from India, Shri Sonam Wangchuk ji, the host for today's conversation, Mr. Kanak Dixit, distinguished Sampark alumni friends in Nepal, the young energetic team from Global, led by Ashish and Kajol, who have organized the visit of Shri Sonam Wangchuk ji to Nepal, colleagues from the embassy, distinguished entrepreneurs, young media personnel, scholars, environmentalists, mountaineers, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Embassy of India, Kathmandu, allow me to welcome all of you to the beautiful lawns of the India House in Kathmandu as we are gathered here tonight to engage ourselves in a conversation on education, innovation, and sustainability in the Himalayas. भारतीय राजदूतावास काठमाडौँको तर्फबाट तपाईहरू सबैलाई काठमाडौँ स्थित यस इन्डिया हाउसको सुन्दर लनमा स्वागत गर्न पाउँदा हामीलाई निकै खुसी लागेको छ. हामी आज साँझ यस हिमालय क्षेत्रमा शिक्षा, नवीनता र दिगोपन सम्बन्धी वार्तालापमा संलग्न हुनेछौँ. This conversation has been curated by the embassy in collaboration with Sampark, the India-Nepal Alumni Network. It is also the part of our year-long celebration of 75 years of India's independence. यो कार्यक्रमको आयोजना भारतीय राजदूतावास र इन्डिया नेपाल एलुमनाई नेटवर्क अर्थात् सम्पर्कको संयुक्त आयोजनामा भएको हो. साथै हामी भारतको स्वतन्त्रताको 75औं वार्षिकोत्सव इन्डिया एट 75 यो लगायत अरू विभिन्न कार्यक्रमहरू वर्षैभरि गरेर मनाउँदैछौँ. It is our distinct privilege to host Sri Sonam Wangchuk, an acclaimed Indian engineer, innovator, and educationist whose incredible work in Ladakh has been a game changer, inspiring social innovations across the region. Sonamji has become a household name post the release of his blockbuster movie Three Idiots. However, this pioneering work in irrigation, holistic education, and sustainability was already known to many of us even before the film made it famous. In conversation with Sri Wangchuk is prominent Kathmandu-based author, publisher, and editor Sri Kanak Dixit ji, whose own writings on these subjects are well known and well respected, not only in Nepal, but in India as well. Before we begin, may I have the honor and pleasure to invite His Excellency, Ambassador of India to Nepal, Sri Vinay Mohan Quatra on stage to formally welcome our two esteemed speakers. Now I request Sri Sonam Wangchuk to kindly come on stage and receive a bouquet from His Excellency the Ambassador. Thank you, Sri Wangchuk. I now request Sri Kanak Dixit ji to kindly come on stage and receive a bouquet from the Ambassador. Thank you, Kanak ji. Thank you, Your Excellency. May I now have the pleasure and privilege to request His Excellency the Ambassador of India to Nepal, Sri Vinay Mohan Quatra, to kindly come to the podium and deliver his welcome remarks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sonam Wangchuk, Kanakji, the young team from Global who have worked really hard alongside the embassy to bring Mr. Sonam Wangchuk to Kathmandu. Esteemed guests, many of you include here Nepal's bright young entrepreneurs, distinguished Nepali alumni who have studied in India, including Kanakji himself, mountaineers, environmental leaders, academic, friends from the media, my colleagues from the embassy. I would like to welcome each one of you here this evening at the lawns of India House. It's a very special day. One, it's a holy today, so as special as they come. Our warm greetings and best wishes on this festive occasion. Two, despite the constraints of pandemic and other demands on his time, Mr. Sonam Wangchuk has been able to take time off and grace this occasion. He just informed me a little while ago that pretty much non-stop flew from Ladakh to here this evening and straight onto this event. Thank you very much, Sonamji. Deeply appreciate your effort. Besides what you have been doing in your sphere of specialization, I think the initiative and the consent that you gave to come to Kathmandu to enable this event and also participate in other activities over the course of your stay here, we deeply appreciate it. Thank you so much. The event today here, as my colleague mentioned a little bit earlier, is part of the celebrations of India at 75, which started earlier this month and would continue for 75 weeks here onwards. This occasion is, this event today is very much an important part of India at 75, and the celebrations manifested through various activities and events over the next 75 weeks will allow us to showcase not just what India at 75 means for itself, for the region and for the world, but also what it signifies for the age-old relationship with our close friend Nepal. And among the various things that connect our two countries and our two societies, two nations, Himalayas occupy a pride of place. These majestic mountains, and Sonam Wangchukji comes from the heart of one of those, have nurtured our civilization for millennia and continue to do so. Our cultures, ways of life, and economic future are also linked to these mountains and the ecosystems that they support. Unfortunately, with climate change in its natural course and partly a result of human activity, the Himalayan ecology and its ecosystems are under stress, and as a result, so is our future. And since the elements of the Himalayan ecology and its ecosystem straddle the boundaries of several nations in the Himalayas, the solutions to the challenges that the Himalayan ecology faces must also be through the cooperative ventures among these nations. In addition, the problem of sustainability, which is inherently linked with the education and entrepreneurship and also with the youth, is also an important factor for us to consider. For a long time, our education systems and entrepreneurship partners have imposed alien solutions over local landscapes. The need of the hour, I guess, is to shape, build, develop, adopt, and practice local solutions to our geography. Clearly, in this, our youth, their education, and our innovators have a critical role to play. That is why today's conversation is so pertinent and so important. I guess it would be fair to say that reimagining education, entrepreneurship, and sustainability is not just a luxury which we can ill afford, but it is now a necessity which we must seriously pursue. And an important bridge in this effort of our pursuits is the group of tens of thousands of Nepalese who have studied in India and upon their return to the home country have excelled in their respective fields. Many of them are present here today. And in doing so, They have contributed both to the development of Nepal and also in strengthening the close friendship between our two countries. As my colleague mentioned earlier, to acknowledge the significant role played by the Nepali alumni, the Embassy of India launched a new initiative, Sampark, India-Nepal Alumni Network, earlier this year. In fact, some of our guests today were present when former President of Nepal, Shri Ram Baran Yadav, a distinguished alumni himself, launched the web portal of Sampark on India's Republic Day earlier in January this year. It is our hope, our belief, that this network would expand quickly into an accessible platform to instantly connect past, present, and future alumni for experience and knowledge sharing so that it can benefit the Nepali society and also contribute to the furthering of relationship between our two countries. Education, entrepreneurship, sustainability, the topic which the two distinguished experts would focus on, operates at multiple levels. Parliaments legislate on them, governments make policy on them, civil society members build narratives on them, and communities act on them. All these, I guess, are very important in their own sphere. But if one was to look at the contributions of Sonam Wangchuk and Kanak Dixit, one would realize that a critical element in, I would say, shaping the path ahead on this is the initiative and intent of an individual. I think Sonam Wangchuk and Kanak Dixit manifest the power of one in shaping how the collective community as a whole looks at a challenge, not only just looks at it, in a way shapes its response to it, and then after shaping its response, acts on it with diligence and perseverance. Sonam Wangchuk dons many hats. He's an engineer, innovator, social reformer, educationist. Not lately, some years ago now, a certain Phuntsuk Wangdu people talk about, inspirations of Three Idiots movie. I think his pioneering work in Ladakh in holistic education, irrigation, clean energy is well known and inspiring. He was just now mentioning about his initiative of alternative university, which is action-driven, focuses less on academic rigor, but more on the act of the community in addressing the challenges. The other panelist today, Kanak Mani, he on his own has shaped many narratives. He's an alumnus of University of Delhi and is well known and well acclaimed for his columns and writings. His written word and his spoken word carries sharp wit, sometimes sharper criticism. I am confident that we'll see some of it during the course of this evening conversation between him and Sonam Wangchuk today. With these words, let me once again, Sonam Wangchuk ji, thank you very much for coming to Kathmandu, for making possible this event. And thank you, Kanak, for sharing your evening with us and enriching all of us here through the conversation between you and Sonam Wangchuk. And thank you very much. Good evening, and let's enjoy the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Quatra. Now, I'd like to request our distinguished panelists, Kanak Dixit and Sonamji, to kindly be on stage. We'll first proceed with a group photograph with His Excellency Ambassador. Thank you. Thank you, Excellency. Now, I'd like to request our distinguished panelists, Shri Sonam Wangchukji and Mr. Kanak Dixit, to kindly take their seats on stage before we begin today's conversation on reimagining education, innovation, and sustainability in the Himalayas. The conversation would last for about 30 to 40 minutes. I would also request our distinguished audience to kindly remain seated. अब म आजका हाम्रा प्रतिष्ठित प्यानलिस्टहरू श्री सोनाम वाङचुकज्यू र श्री कनकमणि दीक्षितज्यूलाई कृपया स्टेजमा आसन ग्रहण गरिदिनु हुन अनुरोध गर्दछु. I have an important note on the question answer session. As we have a very limited time, so to ask a question, please write your questions and names on the papers placed on each of the table and pass them to our colleagues who shall bring them to the stage during the question answer session after the talk. Requesting all of you to please ensure that the questions relate to the topic of today's discussion. While we will try to make space for everyone's questions, in case any question do not get covered due to paucity of time, please feel free to interact with our guest during the dinner. प्रश्नोत्तर सत्रको लागि एउटा सानो जानकारी दिन चाहन्छु. प्रश्न सोध्नका लागि कृपया टेबलमा राखिएको कागजमा तपाईँको प्रश्न र नाम लेखिदिनुहोला र ती प्रश्नहरू हाम्रा सहकर्मीलाई दिनुहोस् जो प्रश्नोत्तरको सत्रमा स्टेजमा हामी हाम्रो डिस्टिङ्ग्विस्ड स्पिकरहरूलाई दिनेछौँ र यहाँहरू सबैलाई सादर अनुरोध गर्दछु कि आफ्ना प्रश्नहरूलाई आजको छलफलको विषयमा नै केन्द्रित राखिदिनुहोला. यदि समयको अभावले कुनै प्रश्नहरू उत्तर दिन नसकिएको खण्डमा कृपया खाना खाने बेला हाम्रो गेस्ट अफ अनर सोनामजीसँग छलफल गर्न सक्नुहुनेछ. Ladies and gentlemen, drinks and snacks shall continue to be served on the table to ensure that we get food along with some food for thought. I would now request Sri Kanakmani Dixitji to kindly begin the conversation with Sri Sonam Wangchuk. अब म कार्यक्रमलाई अघि बढाउन श्री कनकमणि दीक्षितलाई श्री सोनाम वाङचुकसँग कुराकानी सुरु गर्नुहुन अनुरोध गर्दछु. Thank you.
धन्यवाद. सोनाम, सुरुमै नेपालीमा कुराहरू है. तपाईँ आज बिहान लेबाट उडेर अहिले यहाँ आइपुग्नुभयो, भोलि नै फर्किँदै हुनुहुन्छ. पर्सि कत्रो मायाले तपाईँले यहाँ ल्यायो भन्नुहोस् त.
धन्यवाद सबैलाई. मलाई यता नेपालमा आउँदाखेरि भिजिट भन्दा घर फर्केको जस्तो लाग्छ. एकदम नेपाल मेरो मनमा बसेको. लद्दाख हुँदाखेरि पनि अनि लगभग 2065 सालमा म यहाँ एउटा सल्लाहकारको रूपमा आएको अनि 3 महिनामा नेपाली सिकेको र मान्छेहरूसँग धेरै निकट भएको. अनि मेरो साथीहरूले त्यतिखेर भन्थ्यो चिन्जान गराउँदाखेरि सोनाम वाङचुक आधा भारतीय र पुरा नेपाली हो. अनि त्यस्तो माया को सम्झिना छ मेरो. अनि धेरै राम्रो.
त्यसरी तपाईँले यहाँ तानेर ल्यायो. We welcome to a very hazy Kathmandu Valley. I am sure the air in Ladakh is a little bit more pure than what we have to present you with for your breathing pleasure here in Kathmandu. But this is the result of wood smoke and fires. And as yet, we have not tackled this contagion of air pollution, which has overcome us, much worse than when you started coming to Kathmandu. Your areas of interest and activism has been described very well by Ambassador Quatra. So I will not repeat those. What I would suggest is that in our conversation, we delve deeper into those various headings, just for the fact that so much of what we need to learn from each other. You are a good ambassador of Ladakh and India to Kathmandu today because you already know Nepal. So you will be able to respond to some of my queries with an understanding of this society, its own challenges, and everything else. But I'd like to start with actually, before going into the topics, you've had to tackle much frustrations, I'm sure, without even having had to stay and live with you in Ladakh. One knows that someone like you, bubbling with ideas and activism, wanting to do things, and then there'll be a blockage here, a blockage there, and you have to find ways around it. In Nepali, the terminology for such kinds of blockages is handar. Handar khane. I don't know why it is to eat handar, but handar khane is the terminology used. And often I find activists and well-meaning young people saying they try to do something, but the bureaucracy stops us, but the corruption stops us, the age-old ways of doing things of our parents and their grandparents stops us. So they get tired very quickly. My question directly to you, which is across these themes, is how have you sustained your effort, given that you will have faced hunger in Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir as much as we have here in Nepal?
Yes, thank you, Kanak. That is the case, especially when you have ideas that are little ahead of times and that talk of transformational change. But what I believe is that if one starts with vision high but expectations low, I never expected to transform, but one thing led to the other, and expecting challenges along so that you are not taken by surprise. I have always expected much worse challenges than I actually met. So then you have that energy to take them on, because
Okay.
sometimes I would say when I wouldn't have a challenge for say 4 or 5 months, I would start missing them. Where is the challenge? It's going too smooth. What's wrong almost?
Where is the hunger?
Where is the thunder? So you have to have some thunder to take on the thunder.
Yeah. So then, going right into the one area that I have known you for since the late 1980s, which is education, particularly the dissatisfaction you had with the education being received by Ladakh's children, youngsters, and doing something about it. I should let the audience know that Himal, which is Himal South Asian now, and my colleague and editor after me, Anohita Mojumdar, is also in the audience here, fortunately. Himal, before it became South Asian, was a Himalayan magazine. And in probably our very first issue or the second issue, the organization that Sonam founded to improve government school education and essentially education in Ladakh, SECMOL, had just been founded. And for a magazine just starting out to cover the Himalayan region, this was a prize. Here was a local initiative in the Himalaya that could be shared across. So that was an attempt to improve education. I would ask you to tell us a little bit about SECMOL and move into the one area where we have all failed, from Pakistan to Bangladesh to Sri Lanka to Nepal and India, government school education, because that's where the children of the mass goes
Yes.
to.
Yes. To start with Ladakh itself, which resembles very much with the situation in many higher Himalayan villages and regions. So my region was in a state of shambles. It was like a house on fire. Educationally speaking, 95% of the children used to fail in their 10th grade exams repeatedly every year. Now it has come to roughly 75% pass.
Pass.
Yes, after a lot of reforms and so on. But people used to, on top of that, blame the children for being, almost retarded. Some would even say, you don't have enough oxygen in the air. You will never do well. Ladakhi children will never do well in maths or science. Well, I was just out of my engineering. I said, how can, oxygen could be a reason. So we started diagnosing the problem first. And we very soon found, and I'm sure you see in many places in Nepal also, that the textbooks had no relevance to the lives of the children. Even linguistically, it was in Urdu or English. And it spoke of things like children would learn about A for apple, B for ball. Very sensible to give a concrete example for an abstract symbol like A or B. But it would go on copy paste in the Ladakhi mountains to become F for fan. Now, F for fan, the children would ask, "What is this contraption, sir?" to the teacher, and the teacher would say, "I have never seen one, but I'm told it keeps you cold." And children are already in minus 30 degrees, and they wonder, "Oh, who would want to be cooler than they are?" So that's a symbol of what it used to be. It had no relevance to their lives, and therefore, in a language that they couldn't understand, their parents couldn't help, and therefore they would fail in large numbers. So these happen across, and therefore, with the government, we started a movement to bring reforms in the language medium, in the textbooks. We redid all the textbooks. We said, do whatever it takes. Textbooks don't come from heavens like the holy books. It's man-made. So let's make it again for the mountains. So we started remaking textbooks, organizing people into village education committees, and soon the results started jumping, shooting. In 7 years, it was roughly 55% and so on. Now, and then finally 75. Yes. Coming to the issue of pan-South Asia, the challenge of government schools, I really think that's a huge challenge that we must face sooner than later, because we are in a region where some of the schools, few of the schools, maybe less than 5%, would be as good or better than those in America, but 95% are worse than those in sub-Saharan Africa. These happen to be the government schools. And with this kind of situation, you won't have, only have no progress, but actually it's a recipe for unrest, social unrest. Tomorrow, children who are deprived of a dignified livelihood will make it difficult even for those 5%. Those of us who have enough means and are well positioned think that we have no problems. Our children are safely placed in so-called private schools, but they are few. And the rest, who you have to live with are so many and in such difficult situations.
What happens in Ladakh if there is a good government school? Will the private schools then dry up because the public sees that the government school is as good, if not better? Has that happened?
In some instances, but there needs to be a lot of reforms in the system for, instilling trust in people.
Okay.
So I really want, the message I would like to give to all of these regions is, to the haves and the have-nots together, is that you may have the best, but make sure that the system for the masses is also good quality. Even if your son or daughter comes back from New York or London, they'll need workers who can read the drawings well. No? And that's the better scenario. The worst scenario is that they might become some of the people, who would kidnap your children. You can't sleep well in your mansions, then what good is progress? So we have to ensure. And some of the countries that are known for good public education system, like the Scandinavian, you hear a lot about Finland and so on, we must note that they have no concept of two systems. It's the same system where the prime minister to the poor person sends their children.
I'm so glad you have such strong views on this matter, and that is also the reason I brought up the topic of public schools, government schools, right in the beginning, because I believe that the future of South Asia is being unjustly treated by what we are doing to government school education. Looking at Nepal, for example, 80% of Nepal's school children go to government schools. Government schools are not good, and now there is the whole issue of early childhood education, which also is not being presented by rote in the schools. So we are actually not at all building our future. And talking about school books, Nepal is much more diverse society than Ladakh is too. Ladakh is a mountain principality of sorts. Nepal is the most diverse country for its size in the world, and yet the school books are
Same.
a standard school book. And the hope that we have, and we'll move on, the hope we have in Nepal is that the new constitution gives the accountability and responsibility for school education to local government. And we are hoping that maybe that will work. Nothing else has.
Wonderful.
Let's move into the area of architecture. Because you are also trained in mud architecture in France, in Grenoble, I believe. And you've also worked in Nepal trying to promote sustainable architecture. And you also came here after the earthquake and went to the Helambu area to look at what happened to the... So your views on what we are doing wrong in the modern era in all our countries when it comes to living space.
Yes. So one thing that I observe all over, from Ladakh to Nepal and beyond, is that we are giving up on our traditional heritage and wisdom, and blindly copying something that we don't even understand. For example, these concrete, frame structures. They are great when they are well done, but if you do it not right and just cover it in some plaster, they are death traps. Whereas our ancestral ways of building in earth and the wisdom in how they would make them secure and making them smaller, lighter, fewer stories, may not be as grand, but they don't kill if they are done well. So A, we need to learn from our ancestral wisdom. B, we need to innovate even in that, so that they can be actually better than what we are presented as modern. So in Ladakh, what we do is we not only revive the tradition of building in mud or earth, but add to that, add to the ancestral wisdom, the science of passive solar heating. Then you get buildings that are not only safe or resistant to earthquakes, but do not need any heating even in Ladakhi winters, which are like Himalayan climate, -20, -30. They stay at +20 inside. The house I live in is built of mud, passive solar heated, high school science it is actually. You apply it and you get buildings that are way warmer than houses in New Delhi. So much so that I always say when I go to Delhi from Ladakh, I feel cold in winter.
Let me just interrupt and then we can continue with this. When you go to a Delhi household in winter and there is marble everywhere, what does that make you feel?
Cold,
How does that make you feel?
cold, yes.
Well, I must tell you, a lot of Rajasthani marble making their way to living rooms in Kathmandu as well.
Oh, and Leh also.
Okay.
Yes. So we have to really value these, traditional wisdom and rebuild on them.
So the Sekmol campus is also done with materials, but with innovation?
Yes. So at our school, we researched and developed different techniques of reviving the earth architecture. And then now we are promoting it among the rest of the city, military and government. And very happy to share that with the announcement of Ladakh as a carbon neutral zone by the Prime Minister of India, it's now receiving the attention that I've been hoping for the last 30 years. So suddenly now there's a lot of interest in carbon neutral ways of living, and what could be better than solar heating in mountains like Nepal and Ladakh, where abundant energy is showering on you. We are like the Qatar and Saudi Arabia of sunshine. So we must use what is right over our head, abundant and free for all, rich or poor.
Well, when you mentioned the abundant sunshine, showering, you used a very fine term. We're being showered with all this abundant resource, sunshine. That will then take me to one area that I had wanted to talk to you about, which is the continuity or the continuum of Himali in Nepal after the new constitution, and in the process of writing the new constitution, Nepal got a new terminology came into play. We are plains, mid-hill, and high Himalaya. High Himalaya is termed Himali.
Yes.
So let's use a Nepali term for now to describe the region from Baltistan, a Himali region, Ladakh, a Himali region, into northern Himachal, northern Uttarakhand,
Yes.
all the way the rimland of Nepal into northern Sikkim, Bhutan, Arunachal.
Yes,
This entire continuum also has proper sunshine to begin with,
Exactly.
right? Particularly areas that are on the other side of the Himalaya from where we sit. Do you sometimes feel for the lack of connection as a Ladakhi with other parts of the Tibetan speaking, Tibetan dialect speaking world? I'm asking a cultural question.
Yes, so culturally we happen to be very similar from Baltistan to Arunachal to Bhutan, Bhutan as it is in Sanskrit, end of the greater Tibetan culture.
yeah.
So we have many similarities. We're all, as your magazine had brought out, Champa eaters, the barley eating stock. It turns out that only those who could have mastered the art of growing barley could survive in those heights where the growing season is so short that only barley would grow. Yes, I definitely feel that places like these that share a similar culture and similar challenges should be connected, and therefore our latest initiative of setting up a Himalayan Institute of Alternatives, an alternative university called HIAL, Himalayan Institute of Alternatives, Ladakh.
Okay.
It emphasizes on sharing our experiments, research and development over the last 3 decades with similar regions that face similar challenges of cold winters, of water scarcity, of desert environment to grow crops. So right now we are setting up such an alternative university which could bring such people together. So we learn the skills to do well in these, because mountain people generally and Himali mountain people in particular are almost from another planet. It becomes so different, like outer space. We are as close to outer space as you can think of while being on Earth. So we need a different treatment when a young person is in higher education. You can't have the same curriculum for somebody in Ladakh or Mustang in high Himalaya, and somebody in Kerala, coastal Kerala, or hot desert of Rajasthan, or even Tarai. You have to treat them differently because their needs, their challenges are so different. So we very much hope that sooner or later we would have such alternative institutes with mountain focus, not only in Ladakh, but hopefully there will be an Himalayan Institute of Alternatives Nepal, Hayan, that deals with the challenges.
I'm so glad that HIAL has got started in Ladakh, and there's definitely a need for interconnections, because the Himalaya in a way has been brought down by the geopolitical issues, but we must somehow try to ride over that and go back to the cultural roots, so that at least that continuity. Nepal makes up about half of the Himali chain and the Himalayan region. And so what you say is so important. For example, Mustang, particularly the Principality of Lo, lost its king. There's now, of course, a successor, but lost its king, who was part of a historical continuity till his point, and the links to the larger Himalayan region. So Nepal is also losing a lot of what has been preserved, because the road network is expanding very fast. So very important what you have mentioned, and I hope there will indeed be a Hayan at some point, and maybe a Hayas for Sikkim and Hayab for Bhutan, onward and elsewhere.
In each of our countries, whether it is Nepal or India, we valued diversity, unity in diversity, which is what I see in Nepal so much. So it's very important that this diversity gets the attention it deserves, rather than completely make it a melting pot and then make.
Before we move on from the Himalayan region as a whole, you mentioned that article in Himal. Let me mention to the audience that this was an article written by Charles Ramble, an Oxford scholar and a Himalayanist, even more than that, student of Himali cultures. So his article in Himal was titled "Whither the Samba Eaters," because that was a collaboration. The title was a collaboration between him and me when we are looking at what connects the Himali region. It is the eating of samba. And how do you pronounce samba in Ladakhi?
Sampa.
Sampa.
That's barley flour.
Yes, yes. And so, once again, to come back to the topics flagged for us, one of your areas of activism has been trying to revive volunteerism. So let me link that with young adults. Earlier we talked about schooling, but young adults and the whole issue of migration. Perhaps Ladakh came late into out-migration, but I have read some of your writings. That is also a matter of concern, is it?
Not out of Ladakh.
Yeah.
Very few migrate
Even
out
now.
of Ladakh.
Even now.
No, even now. There's more migration within Ladakh from villages to the more urban Leh area. That's more of a concern because then villages slowly dry up.
Okay.
Yes.
So then there are parts, for example, of far west Nepal where there is nobody left to even do the funeral rites for the elderly who have passed on. Right? So if that is the case, what are you doing about it?
So exactly. So there are reasons why they leave. Often it is economic. What we try to do is, for example, tourism. Both Nepal and mountains of the Himalayas in India are very attractive, very touristic. So giving tourism that touch of alternative tourism, where they go to rural areas to experience authentic Ladakh or Mustang, brings economy to their doorstep. So in Hayal, we run one course on sustainable tourism, rural mountain tourism, so that young people don't have to leave their place, but rather tourists come to them with all the economic opportunities, and add to that, innovation in agriculture. For example, we are now starting to work on things that grow in these high Himalayas, which the rest of the plains of South Asia, are asking for in midsummer. For example, peas, broccoli, cauliflower. They sell at 5 times the normal price, and this is produced right at that time in these high places. So bringing economy to the doorsteps through, we call it farm stay tourism. The tourism where you don't go to see something, but to be at the farm is an experience in itself, not another destination for which you spend the night, but itself is a destination. So that kind of promotion.
So economic activity that keeps the youngsters back home in the home villages rather than down in Leh or some of the townships.
Yes. That, and then of course education is another reason. So improving the educational infrastructure would give more reasons to young people with their children to be in their homes.
I would mention to the audience that we will go on for maybe 5 minutes or so here in this conversation. If you have a question or a comment, just please raise your hand and somebody will come along, and Asha will come along and pick up the note, the pana from your notepad and pass it on. And if we do not get any questions or comments, we'll just continue talking in our own merry way up here. There is one, you talked about farm stay. And I must, at this point, place before you a complaint I have about Nepali attempts at farm stays. Here we call them homestay. And there is a very popular destination in Lamjung. It is called Ghalegaon, and it is supposed to be the exemplar for homestays. And you should also know that there is now a boom in domestic tourism in Nepal at a time when the foreign tourists have dried up. The same must be happening in Ladakh in terms of overseas tourists. But these homestays are ultimately uncomfortable. And I got a sense that what you need is not a $5 a stay a night, but you need a $30 a night. That's how you keep the youngsters home, because it's the income level that will generate excitement to stay back. How are the what you call farm stays in Nepal? And is there something that we might learn from your experience? Because what I have seen in what are called homestays here, it's pretty rugged living, frankly.
We try to adopt what could be called a middle path, Madhyam Marg.
Madhyam Marg.
So work on both the demand and the supply side. On the supply side, make them as comfortable as it can be in a rural setting without compromising on certain things. Like, we don't want all the villages in Ladakh to suddenly have flush toilets with water wasted in a desert like Ladakh. We want to have modernized versions of compost toilets with the comfort of sitting and all such. But at the same time, while raising the standard, we also want to lower the unnecessarily high standards on the demand side. That you are exploring a rural setting, don't expect the same 5-star comforts of a city. If you want that, then you should be in the city. When you go explore, if you go to the Everest, you don't expect your 5-star culture to go up on the Everest. So expect something different and celebrate that difference. I think we need to have promotions that educate future clients to expect something different and celebrate that as a learning, as a
and would be
exposure.
Local, and the flavor would be local.
Yes, flavor
be
should
Ladakh.
be exactly. So don't expect London in Ghalegaon.
Yeah, right, agreed. I feel that perhaps it all boils down to economics. There are 2 or 3 places in Nepal where the income from tourism has helped preserve places. For example, there is a town called Bandipur on the way to Pokhara, which has got preserved because firstly it didn't get destroyed because the market died, because the highway came at the bottom. But then that saved the top, and then because it was a salubrious place with good views and all that, it stayed. So in the end, it is income. Wouldn't you agree?
So yes, definitely. And like this example, whole of Ladakh is an example. Earlier when you asked, is there an out migration? And I said no.
Yeah.
That is the story of how tourism developed in Ladakh. Since 70s, when it was opened, it was basically a homestay tourism. Even today, the best of hotels in Ladakh are owned by local people, local families who are, wandering around the best hotels also. Somehow Ladakhi people have resisted, big 5-star chains and kept it in families. And therefore, young people have got enough opportunities not to have to become, refugees in big cities.
Then
So
let me seek your advice then on a region just northeast of Kathmandu. This is the place that you have been to and you know, and therefore you'll be in a better position to advise. This is the area known as Helambu. Now, Helambu is inhabited by the Yolmo people.
Yes.
But it is a Himalayan terrain. But from there, you don't see the high Himalaya. You see the lower chain called Jugal Himal. So this is not the Everest terrain or the Manasalu or Annapurna. And so it did not get too many visitors. Around the time when there was going to be tourists interested, the earthquake came. And all our traditional architecture fell. And in particular, there is a village, the biggest village there is called Tarkegang. And Tarkegang was made up of a warren of lanes through stone, dressed stone houses. And there are only 2 places like that in Nepal of habitation of stone villages with, lanes running through them. One is in Mananggaon, and one is this. This one is finished. So now, all the new buildings that have come up through the national reconstruction effort are all standard issue. Uh, Concrete structures, tin roofs, and tin roofs that shine in the daytime. So even the aesthetics of a mountainside of Nepal is changed because now you got shining mountains at the sun, with the sunshine. So something has changed dramatically with the earthquake here in Nepal. What would you have done?
Well, I would have first explored what among the traditional practices survived. And if there are some, I imagine there have been earthquakes in the past also. If there are some techniques, some styles, or that have done well, I would try and promote those. Only as a last resort, I would introduce something completely new. If nothing has survived and if they are at risk, maybe yes. But then that alone should not be a attraction or repulsion for tourism.
A dampener.
Yes, I think we should promote also the hospitality of the region, the culture, the history, so that it makes up for this.
Yes. One of the unutilized resource we have, and I'm sure we share this with Ladakh, is the great sage Padmasambhav. Padmasambhav has trekked all over the mountains, and yet our tourism literature doesn't speak enough about Padmasambhav. Even the hills of Helambu are known to have been visited. Some of it may be myth, some of it may be real. How closely is Ladakh related to Padmasambhav? Because he was born near enough in Sawat, nearby in the northern areas of Pakistan. Is Padmasambhav a personality in Ladakh?
Oh yes, very much, very much. It's I have seen it out to Sikkim and beyond.
Yeah.
But very
Ladakh
much
as
in
well.
Ladakh, there are various monuments that are related to him. I don't know how much historical fact, how much from where he took flight and so on.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Okay.
It is,
Then that's another area where I think if the world were to be told about Padmasambhav, but before that we need to ourselves know about Padmasambhav.
Yes.
And
And
our
generally,
culture.
I would say explore our histories,
Yes.
explore stories that can be as attractive as our buildings and
Yes.
visible, tangible culture. There is this intangible that needs to be brought to the fore.
Actually, Sonam, you gave me the answer, and thank you for that, because I see that the Helambu area is actually destroyed. But what you're saying is, even if the architecture comes back in a new form, all is not lost. There's so much more you can still do because the landscape is still there, the people are still there, and the intangible heritage is still there. Thank you for that. I think I should move towards the end of our conversation. I suspect that the audience is so interested and keen that they have not sent us any question or comment. They're coming. You want to read them out or shall I?
There are 15 questions.
Oh, goodness.
This is a good one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I was thinking that the audience was enraptured to such an extent that there was nothing coming, but there are quite a few here. Let me start, and depending on how much time we have, I will
Draw lots.
Yeah, let's see how it goes. From Pema Gyantso, who's the Director General of ISIMOD, an organization you know well, right? International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. Beyond politics and diplomacy, what do you suggest would enhance transboundary cooperation and regional solidarity to address climate change impacts? And this is the topic I was going to bring in at the close of our conversation, but the climate crisis enters at this point. So, beyond politics and diplomacy, what do you suggest could enhance transboundary cooperation and regional solidarity to address climate change?
Yes, thank you for bringing this topic up. I mean, it's the biggest crisis, and what we should be paying the most attention to is climate change, especially in these mountains, as we will be the forefront of this onslaught, in the mountains and the sea shores. I think people people and their awareness and their sensitization towards this challenge coming. Somehow we humans have very short-sighted view, so we don't see what is coming beyond, decades. And our politics also is designed for 5-year solutions, which doesn't cover something like climate change that has much longer range. So I think, but in democracy, which most of us have, people are the strongest power, the kingmakers. So therefore, awareness, understanding, sensitivity towards this issue, in whatever way can be promoted, can bring the biggest change. Because if people see and have high priorities given to this issue of climate change, then governments will pay the attention that it deserves. If our people are all lost in subsidies on kerosene and rice and so on, our governments will busy themselves catering those. But if we are aware about, say, education for midterm and awareness about climate change for longer term, then our governments will also play that game. I really think that in a democracy, it's not leaders who lead. Actually, it's the people who lead, and leaders follow. So whatever becomes the priority of the people become the issues for the leaders and politicians and governments. So I would say promoting awareness among people at the root. It's not a shortcut, it's rather a long but a very sure cut.
Okay. So I have a supplementary question to that. One is, how do you sensitize the public to the challenges of climate crisis, which starts by making them understand the crisis that is upon us? What about the one challenge that the world is facing, which is how do you sensitize the world population enough to consider the climate crisis as real? Because what do we see? We hear of islands that are going to go underwater. People have tried that. We hear of coastlines that will be inundated. That has been tried. We see the Alaskan glaciers collapsing into the sea. And yesterday the news was they are actually melting 100 times quicker than people had expected. All of these have been tried, but the sluggish socio-economic engine does not, or the ship does not change. Could it be that the Himalaya as a peopled place can be useful in raising the alarm? Because the Himalaya is like a barometer of climate change. Because not only from the Tarai to the mountain, but the individual glaciers that are melting so fast. Could not the Himalaya be the place from where the alarm is spread most convincingly?
Yes. So, first of all, I don't see so much pessimism also.
Okay.
If we are to critically analyze, I see pessimistic situation among the older generation. What you say is more applicable to the older generation.
As I represent that category, yes.
Who played away with the resources and now have landed the new generation in this mess. But among the younger generation, there is a whole lot of different thinking and, small houses, minimalism, living simply, all such things are not so bad among
As
the
an
young
oldie, I would say, I hope. But please continue.
Yes, so I think we have to
But could we not
keep our hopes on...
But could we not, the positivity accepted. But could the Himalaya,
Yes.
the Himalayan region not be the place from where the...
Totally.
Not the alarm then, the flag.
Yeah, I
of
totally
tracking.
agree, and I was very impressed, and I think there should be more of an initiative that was taken in Nepal. I think the parliament sat at the base of the Mount Everest, or in Ladakh, while we make these artificial glaciers, ice stupas. People start applauding, wow, this is an interesting solution, and television channels come. And I tell them, if you just want to entertain your citizens in Paris or London with the film on this, I'm not interested. But if you take a message from us, then maybe yes. So I make it a point that we say at the end that this is what we are forced to do, make our own, resort to making our own glaciers.
Yes.
But you can't be sitting on your couches watching this television show. You have to also join in. And that's why we started on the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, something called the I Live Simply movement. I suggest you also look up. It's ilivesimply.org, and made it fun for young people, the younger generation, to participate by presenting it like a crowdfunding campaign.
Could you
where-
repeat the, could you repeat
Yeah.
the URL?
It's called the I Live Simply movement, ilivesimply.org. Like how Gandhi said, live simply so others may simply live. That's what is needed. And I say, please live simply in the big cities so we in the mountains simply live.
Okay. All right.
so on this platform, it's a crowdfunding, but not of money, because the planet doesn't need your money. It needs your lifestyle change, behavior change. So contribute in pledges to change your behavior, pledge to go from cars to bicycles, aeroplanes to trains, plant trees, etc. So that's how we try to engage young people.
Okay. I'll now try to, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
go through these questions, and I'll try not to interrupt so that we can try to get through as many questions as possible. Before that, you mentioned the meeting held in Kalapathar at the base of Mount Everest. That was during the time of Prime Minister Madhav Kumar Nepal, which was in parallel to an underwater meeting done by Prime Minister Nasheed of Maldives. And this year, COVID postponed the plans, but the current Nepal government and the foreign ministry is working to have something known as Sagarmatha Sambad, which is meant specifically to take on the issue of climate crisis.
Wonderful.
So things are moving on here as well. I guess with the help of ICIMOD and other organizations, a whole Himalayan activism is probably best for this.
Yes.
So let me read this. Nepal is this is Amit Agarwal. Nepal is a rich country with abundant energy, natural resources, and youth as energy. But still we export around 2,000 migrant workers every day. How can we collaborate with you or your open university to reverse this? A quick answer.
Well, I would say have such contextual, skill-based, relevant universities in the mountains, not just ours there, but have them here, so that people are skilled to solve challenges in the mountains. I would say two ways. One is to raise the standard of life or livelihoods, but at the same time bank on the rich ancestral wisdom of living simply, so that we don't make ourselves feel poor by just comparing with some people in London who are off by miles from how people should live on this earth. We are trying to emulate people who would need 4 planets, and giving away our wisdom of living within the means of the planet. So it should again be both demand and supply side.
And you also explained earlier the economic activities and income and profit at your home village, if possible.
And reducing your desires towards a life of contentment.
Two more.
Otherwise, nothing will satisfy.
क्या करना है तो?
Sure.
ठीक है.
I think if you guys don't mind, we'll continue with some more questions. I think we want to listen to Sonam ji in terms of his ideas on the queries that all of you have. So,
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you.
Dr. Madhu Ghimire, what do the panelists think are the real reasons for the failure of basic education in our part of the world? Why are we failing if we are? Is there a demand for education among our rural population? Are the states improving education? Does that work? I don't understand that last point, but is there a demand for, since we all agree that the government school education, public school education is poor, the question that I think perhaps you could answer is there a demand among our rural population at all for good education?
I think demand is there, but hopelessness also, because they don't see much changing. So to cut the answer short, I would say what I have learned from some 20, 30 years of working in government school education. I think in our subcontinent, general school education, most of which is government school,
yes.
will not improve until those who have a say also have a stake. You understand?
Yes,
Right
yes,
now, people who manage the education system do not have their own children there.
Yeah, yeah.
So they don't really need to care so much. And those who have a stake don't have a say. They're voiceless, poor people. So I see the only answer is if we somehow could make it mandatory that public representatives have to have their children or themselves use the services they are supposed to offer to the people. You'll see within 5 years they'll change the scenario.
I thought there would be applause. Yes, there is some applause. Yes. And I would once again highlight the one key. Everything has been tried in Nepal. Since the question was to the panelists, Dr. Gimere, I'll just make one quick point. Everything has been tried, donor assistance, all kinds of fads and programs and ideas, but they're all dumped on the Ministry of Education. There's something known as a basket fund for education, and it is not working. It is not working. It has not worked. Perhaps this idea of responsibility given to the local wada, the local ward, and the local government, municipalities, rural and urban, might be the key. So I would hope that in this very impressive gathering by the quality of questions I'm seeing here, this might be an idea to share everywhere and to keep it in one mind that government school education should be improved and the key is local government, perhaps. Okay, this is Gururaj Luitelji, editor of Nagarik. तपाईको नेपालीमै पढेर सुनाउँछु है त
हजुर
तपाईको प्रश्नको क्रममा सडक निर्माणले हाम्रो वातावरण स्थानीयता र वातावरण लोकलिजम एन्ड इन्भाइरोन्मेन्ट बिगारेको कुरा बारे उठाउनु भयो बाटो बनाउँदा पनि हाम्रो स्थानीय वातावरण परम्परा आदिमा ध्यान दिनुपर्छ कि लद्दाखमा उहाँहरूको संस्थाले यसतर्फ केही गरेको छ कि छैन इन नेपाल राइट नाउ देयर इज अ म्यासिभ if that's the right word, contagion, what we call dozer terror. When you fly out day after tomorrow, if the haze is not too bad, you'll see all of Nepal landscape of scratches on the countryside. And what Gunraji is saying that this goes against environmental interests and it also goes against local interest. Has Ladakh faced this type of a problem of roads? Maybe it's because it's a different kind of climate and geography, not as much, but what is your own response?
I see two questions in this. One is whether physically roads have affected the environment and culture. In Ladakh, it's a desert environment. We don't have all the lush greenery that you have. So the effect is not as pronounced. Therefore, I would say not as much.
Yeah.
But the other side aspect is that whether these roads have influenced the local cultures. Once roads open, people become urbanized and forget their ancient traditions and so on. That may be yes, and that's not a reason we won't build roads to people. The answer I would think for that would be, like Gandhiji said again, that I would like the winds of all directions to blow in my house. But I would keep the doors and windows of my house open for all the winds to blow, but I would refuse to be blown off my feet by any of those winds. Okay. So we have to strengthen these cultures and people so much so that they may have all the roads coming, but they are firm on their feet.
Let me go to the next question, because each of these questions could take us some minutes to respond to. This is Santosh Nepal from Isimod. Can you please share the failure mistakes which turn out to be your greatest learning in the context of making ice stupas, an inspirational story for climate change adaptation? It is in the context that failures are the ladders towards success. We should not be afraid of failures. Rather, change our attitude, learning from mistakes. So in talking about have you learned from your mistakes and etc., he also brings in the topic of the ice stupas. So you may want to refer to them as well.
In anything new I have tried, there have been more failures than successes. You know, actually, any success you see today, whether it is motor cars or electricity, there have been more failures. Before Einstein got the light bulb right, there were 999 failures. Similarly, in our work also, more so in ice stupas. I mean, it has been a Tom and Jerry struggle between me and water, trying to freeze it and it escapes. And
So the ice stupa just is an attempt to conserve water during the winter months to be used for irrigation and other purposes during the summer months. And this has become a cause célèbre. Everybody talks about it. And so in that connection, yes, please continue.
I would still say it's a work in progress. We are still struggling, and there have been like 9 failures for every small success. You know, we have tried horizontal, we have tried vertical, we have tried slanting, but each time it manages to slip. What I'm talking about is the idea is to freeze water in winter when nobody needs it, so that it stays frozen till May, you know, spring or summer, when everybody needs it. But it sounds very simple. You know, you have the resource of cold climate, you have water, but it is quite tricky.
Let me ask you a question which will link us directly through the atmosphere. We didn't have winter rains this year. Did you get winter rains?
Snow, you mean?
You got snow?
No.
In
In
high
our case,
already-
it would be
Yes.
snow, but we had no snow, and everybody is very concerned. And that's where such innovations come. You know, whatever melts from glaciers, which is not this year's snow, but hundreds of years' snow, or permafrost, that trickles away into the Indus, into the Arabian Sea, has to be stopped and frozen,
Yes.
so that it goes slowly, being somewhat useful to the people. That's the struggle of artificial glaciers or ice stupas. And
Ambassador, shall we go for another 10 minutes to see how much we can? Okay. We talk a lot about, this is Subhash Ghimire ji, editor, if this is the same Subhash Ghimire, editor of Republica. Hota? Hola. We talk a lot about leapfrogging in development. Should our societies aspire to leapfrog in the developmental fronts? If so, what does leapfrog mean to our Himalayan societies?
Well, again, I would say yes, leapfrog in development, but not only in physical material development alone. How about leapfrogging into the depth of human, the world within us?
Yeah.
So there I get reminded of, and I'll cut the answer short by saying something that the Buddha said, and which always guides me. So the Buddha said, if we talk of leapfrogging in development, Buddha said, for a human being, it is a greater achievement to conquer a single desire than to fulfill 1,000. So rather than only chasing, fulfilling desires, if we also reduce our desires, that's the technology of the future, not of, grabbing all the iron and lithium and so on, but lowering our demands and desires so that we are happy with less. So that's a direction we need to also leapfrog in.
So if you reduce your desire, as the Sakyamuni said, you also have to leap less. You don't have to leap as far, right? So I guess that's...
I think this part of the world, the Indian subcontinent, has been a leader in this kind of philosophy for thousands of years. So we need to rediscover our roots and not just ape the West, which is all about fulfilling desires.
Okay, Kapil. So, Sonamji, talking about the human development indicators, how do you address the gender issue and matter of gender equality in Ladakh? Quick answer.
Well, generally we say that in Ladakh there is a high degree of equality already. But I often differ and say that we have this equality in almost everything except when it comes to political leadership. We have very few. And that's the main target where we should have women. I really think I wouldn't worry if our drivers were not women. I would worry if our leaders are not women, because I think women are much more compassionate as a homemaker to build a country like a home. And it is that compassionate attitude.
And there's not enough. And there's not enough women in leadership, political leadership in Ladakh.
In Ladakh, in the world. I think if we had, then we wouldn't have had the world wars.
Good. We hope. We hope. Same question from Mr. Kapil. This is about using chemicals in the social. Using of chemicals in the social is crucial problem in Nepal and will not see the ray of hope of the soil. I think the question relates to use of chemical fertilizer in the soil. Could you respond to that quickly? Your own views on organic versus chemical fertilizers, urea?
It's a simple balance of nature or chemistry. You know, what we eat and what we excrete, except for what stays in our body, all comes out. And if we use that in the field, the cycle would continue. Instead, what we do is we eat and we excrete in water or in underground through these Western toilets. And then we break air molecules to take nitrogen. There is all the nitrogen that you need in our urine, for example. Rather than collecting it from our urine, we break air molecules using, you know, power guzzling, smoke belching machinery. So it's a warped, crazy scenario. Organic makes sense because that is how the cycle of nature works.
So here I'll ask you a question that I had meant to earlier. How do you go to scale with something? For example, the Nepal government itself has decided to go, now that it's going to have some surplus electricity, it seems, go for a chemical fertilizer plant in Nepal. In some level of economic thinking, that may even make sense because otherwise you'd be importing the chemical fertilizer. However, the campaign that various people have for going back to organic fertilizer and reviving our soil, that seems to be a good idea in pockets, but to go to scale, this is the question I have for you, because Ladakh is a relatively small place, and perhaps you will have achieved success there.
Not yet, but
yeah. But I said perhaps. But more than that, the point I'm making is the whole subcontinent is going downhill fast with this attraction of chemical fertilizers, and the soil is being destroyed. How do you go to scale? Because it's such a good idea to think organic, but then how do you convince?
Well, we have done enough of wrong. I think the industrial age has done enough of wrong in training and conditioning our minds to think we need chemical fertilizers. Actually, it was out of commercial interest. Otherwise, any scientist worth the title would know that, you know, it's better to have a cyclic nutrition cycle. So therefore, I again would say it's the awareness of the people who build governments and who build power. They need to be aware of the wrongs of this path and the rights of a natural cycle. I mean, we eat tons and tons of food, but retain only 60 kilos. So where is the rest going? It's all going back in the wrong place if you use the wrong system. But even in Ladakh, why I'm saying all this is because in Ladakh we have organic based on human waste. Because we don't have much of organic biomass around. So human waste. And that's what I'm most proud of, because human waste is actually not waste. 99%, I would say, is out there, which is food for the plants. And then plants are food for us. So that's a perfect cycle.
I think you have already answered the question by Dr. Pankaj, whose question was, why not use our age-old technology to eradicate human feces from the septic tank? I think in a roundabout way, the reference is to utilizing it for organic purposes. I would say, for our audience, we talked about dozer atanka. We talked about so many other issues. I think when we leave today, what he just said, which did not generate an applause, but not necessary, but the idea of organic versus chemical, at a time where the Nepal government has announced decision to go chemical, it may be something to keep in mind. Dr. D.N. Shah, how do you think the young generation can be prepared for environmental challenges of the present day? If I might say so, you have already more or less answered this question. Perhaps the question was written before you got to that point. So, Dr. Bola Thapa from Kathmandu University, Vice Chancellor, recently appointed Vice Chancellor of Kathmandu University. Congratulations for reimagining education at the school level, number one. That's a comment. Number two, Nepal's higher education, especially engineering education, is new. Do you think we need to reimagine engineering education? Most of the textbooks and knowledge are from India and the West. Or should engineering education be universal? And then he gives us some very interesting points. Kathmandu University has started a course on bachelor's on Himalayan architecture. There is opportunity for cooperation, maybe through higher.
Sure. I would say there should be a base that is universal. What is universal, but very soon there should be, relevance, contextual fine-tuning to the kind of environment we are targeting. So Nepal and Kathmandu University or Engineering Institutes should lead the way for mountain ecosystem, solutions that are not faced by New Delhi or New York. How do you heal the damaged valleys, ecologically damaged valleys? How do you revive melting glaciers or retain glacial lakes? All these are there for such regions as Nepal to explore more than some university in New Delhi or New York.
Okay. So I will ask one more question from Dyutiman Chaudhary, and then I will read the remaining questions, and I'm sure Sonam will be around here, and he can try and respond to them, and you can buttonhole him. The question from Dyutimanji is, in the digital age, how can the mountains move towards self-reliance and transformation through entrepreneurship? So this is bringing in entrepreneurship and digital technology.
Yeah, I think digital technology is a great savior for such remote places. You are no longer remote because the digital highway doesn't need crushing and blasting mountains. It's a highway that makes you as close to anywhere in the world while sitting in my little village of 10 households in Ladakh, in Uletokpo. I'm connected to the world. My highway is as broad as any highway connecting any cities. So that could be used to, export what you might have to, for example, promote your kind of sustainable tourism, to have guests coming there, products, handicrafts that are valued world over to be going out. All this digital e-commerce could be used by mountain people if they're given those skills in their higher education with that.
Thank you very much. In fact, when we were preparing for this talk, we called you for a three-way conversation, Abhishekji, you and me, and you were actually out in the countryside, looked like a high desert, which is what Ladakh is, I guess.
Yes,
and we were communicating easily as if you are in your drawing room. So that means we can do all these things.
Exactly. Right? So we, in the high mountains, remote places are the most privileged when it comes to this technology.
So Sonam, I'll just read the following questions. I must say that both the questions as well as the variety of experiences in this audience is quite extraordinary. And only your presence and the embassy's invitation could have got this quality of a gathering.
And your
so thanks to the embassy and thanks to you. Climate change. Dawa Stevens Sherpa, tourism entrepreneur as well as a Everestier. How do you see the ever-increasing pressures of climate change on mountain communities, especially water security, and how do you envision tackling it? Fortunately, later in your conversation, we talked about water security and we did talk about climate change as well. Bola Thapa. Hi Sonam. So this must be somebody who knows you, Amitesh Roy. Hi Sonam, so much to learn from you. from you. Are you taking interns? You can answer that too.
Not only interns, but with HIAL, the Himalayan Institute of Alternatives, our hope and aim is to have young people from all over the Himalayas to come together, learn from each other's successes and failures as much.
Okay. How this is Mr. Santabir Lama, President Nepal Mountaineering Association. How can mountain children's regular education be made more practical and sustainable? Some of that has been responded to.
But I would say not just mountain children, all children in the world are suffering from a paper, chalk and talk education. So everybody needs.
And the other one also, just a question, how can mountain tourism education can make for better sustainable tourism in the context of Nepal? Ancestral wisdom को छलफल त गरियो तर भूकम्प पीडितले परम्परागत ancestral wisdom सहितको घर बनाउन खोज्दा सरकार र उसले पठाएको इन्जिनियरले स्वीकार नै नगर्ने अवस्था आएको पाइयो के गर्ने यो के गर्ने चाहिँ नि I'll throw it back to the audience गाह्रै प्रश्न गर्नुभयो र यसमा हामी छलफल गरौँला
तर यो जुन युनिभर्सिटी इन्जिनियरिङ इन्स्टिट्युट्सले यस्ता सिपहरूलाई रेकग्निसन दिनुपर्ने हो अध्ययन गर्नुपर्ने हो अनि त्यसपछि त्यसलाई त्यस्तो सम्मान
ओके उसले यहाँ दुईटै युनिभर्सिटीका भाइस चान्सलर यहाँ हुनुहुन्छ उहाँहरूलाई सोध्ने के गर्ने भनेर अहिले दिने खालको Global warming may be more evident in the Himalayas, but can it be solved by Himalayan communities alone? Ambassador Vinay Quatra.
No, that's why the I Live Simply movement is to engage them and at least to make them not feel, as if there is no problem at all. Because today in the Himalayas, tomorrow everybody will be engulfed and everybody needs to.
And the only point I would add, Ambassador Quatra, would be that the point I made, that perhaps it is a way to grab the attention of the global policymakers if we speak of the Himalaya, because they are not just ice flows breaking apart. These are people living in these mountains, so they make it more real.
And victims are more, real when they speak.
Yeah. We talked about this. I think we're almost done. Yo bhayo. Yo pani bhayo. Yo pani bhayo. Yo pani bhayo. Lakshman Shrestha जी ले लेख्नुहुन्छ teaching hospital Dr. Lakshman Shrestha. Social, economic and environment impact of COVID-19 in Ladakh. Quickly, 10 sentences.
Yes, it has been impacted very highly with all the tourism and labor force coming, but it is recovering. Perhaps we are realizing that to pin all our hopes in one thing like tourism was a mistake. People are diversifying now.
Okay. I would say that we, in this hour and a little more perhaps, we have tackled enormous issues very competently, thanks to Sonam here, because his experience, his ability to communicate, and his ability to relate issues and ideas beyond Ladakh. I think we've been privileged to have him. अनि हामीलाई अर्को प्रिभिलेज पनि छ यहाँहरु सबै यो ढिलै गर्यौं हामीले तर पनि बस्दिनु भयो सुनिदिनु भयो and I think there is attractive dinner waiting and त्यही डिनरको दौरानमा उहाँलाई अरु प्रश्नहरु पनि गर्न सक्नुहुन्छ. Thank you all.
Thank you, Kanakji, for your wonderful facilitation and the embassy and Global for having me here and such patient audience. Thank you very much.
And there is one last point. I am also a member of Samparka. Samparka is the network of alumni who have studied in India, I presume college and beyond. And so this is partially a Samparka event. And I think it's our duty to try to reach out and make this organization more jallo ballo in the days to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Dhanyawad.
Thank you. With this, we come to end of today's formal discussions. I am immensely grateful to the panelists for sharing their enlightening views, allowing us to indeed reimagine the scope and meaning of education, innovation, and sustainability in the Himalaya region. I'd like to once again thank His Excellency Ambassador Quatra, our esteemed panelist, Sonam ji, and of course Kanak ji. I also take this opportunity to thank Sampark Alumni Network, Global team, and all of you here present this evening. I'm also happy to inform you that Sonamji will be in Nepal until 30th of March 2021 and will be participating in the Skill Week organized by Global. I encourage all of you to please follow the Skill Week events, which I'm sure will give a concrete shape to many ideas we saw that discussed today. The buffet dinner service is now open. I wish you all a very enjoyable evening. Thank you, namaste, and once again, a very happy Holi. Thank you.